Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you another episode of Oscar Reviews. Today I'm reviewing a movie that I actually did review the first year I did this series of videos, but no longer have that review, and I've been meaning to re-review it for a while, so I decided, I'm doing Oscar Reviews, I'll review this film. It is a film from the year I was born, actually, 1989, and it actually came out in it came out originally in December. That was its limited release, and then it had a wider release almost before my first birthday the following year, but technically it came out in 89, so that's the year I'm going to list it as. And it was nominated for several Academy Awards, which I'll get to in a second. The film, of course, is Glory, which is based on the story of the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry, which is the first formal unit of the U.S. Army to be made up entirely of African American soldiers, who were led by Colonel Robert Shaw, who in this movie is played by Matthew Broderick. Now, the movie is directed by Edward. I don't know if the Z is silent or not, so it'd either be Zwick or Wick. I don't know if the Z is silent or not. Usually, when it's like a weird thing at the beginning like that, it usually is. So I'm just going Zwick. I'm gonna check his Wikipedia page, just see real quickly, because they usually have tips to how to pronounce the name. And no, they don't. Great. Anyway, this was his second movie. His first movie was 3 years earlier. It was About Last Night. He followed this movie up with a movie called Leaving Normal. Then, after that, he directed a movie which my grandma really does enjoy, that I really gotta get to watch one day. I noticed it was nominated for Academy Awards as well, so maybe I'll try to work it in somewhere. Legends of the Fall. Then he directed Courage Under Fire, then The Siege. Then in 2003 he released, this is the only one of his films that I've actually seen. It's a film that I do enjoy. Maybe I'll try to sneak it in as well. The Last Samurai. Then he did Blood Diamond, which is another film that I've seen parts of the film. It looks like an interesting one. I've got to give it a watch. If I remember correctly, I think that's the film that Leonardo DiCaprio got nominated for an Academy Award for, but I could be wrong. Then after that he did Defiance, and the last movie he did was a comedy called Love and Other Drugs, and he hasn't directed a movie since. Kind of a I think he probably of course that was in 2010, so he's either directing one currently or just looking at scripts or just enjoying just resting or something. But he's directed, it looks like a handful of good films. Now, of the two I've seen, which is better, Last Samurai or Glory? I have to say I like them about the same, more or less. More or less, I will say, but they're both good for what they have to portray. It's just this one's probably a little bit more true to actual history, even though it does have embellishments. Anyway, the Academy Awards it got nominated for. It got nominated for 5. It got nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Denzel Washington, which he won. Ironically, he also won that award for the Golden Globes, which was the only Golden Globe it won, but another story. It got nominated for Best Art Direction and Film Editing, and it won Best Cinematography and Sound, which I agree it definitely deserved to win those. But if there's one nomination I think it should have gotten, it was Best Original Score for James Horner, because the score Horner did for this movie kind of echoes the subject matter of the film, and it's a very powerful score. It's one of those scores that when you hear it, it kind of like hits you home, so I think it should have been nominated. Sad. It was nominated at the Golden Globes, but it lost. And of course, ironically, the Golden Globes also nominated Edward for Best Director, which I think he probably should have been nominated for this film. At least nominated, even if they didn't give it to him. But for what it was, it deserved the ones it did win. Now, other than Matthew Broderick as Colonel Shaw, the movie stars Denzel Washington as a character named Trip, Morgan Freeman as a guy named John Rollins, which I don't remember if they mentioned it in the movie or not, but I'm guessing his character was either a freeman or a slave that was freed earlier in his life. I don't remember them ever mentioning it. Now, Trip is an escaped slave, so that's kind of set in stone. But with Morgan Freeman's character, it doesn't really make a big difference whether or not we know, at least for me. Cary Elwes plays Major Cobbett Forbes, who in the movie is a friend of Shaw's. Cliff DeYoung plays another colonel named James Montgomery. Andre Braugher plays a Private Thomas, who is a free black who is a friend of Shaw's. Alan North plays the Governor John Andrew. John Finn plays Sergeant Major I'm gonna have trouble with his name. Mulcahy. Yeah, I got it. Mulcahy, who is basically, the toughest nail sergeant you can imagine. Kind of try to. Here's how you could think of it. Imagine Gunnery Sergeant Hartman. You put him in a different branch. You make him a little less harsh, and without the cursing, no F-bombs or anything, without the actual punching. In a Civil War setting, that's basically what this character is. But he's like the tough Irish stereotype. My mother could read it. That's not even an Irish accent. I can't really do a good Irish voice. Let me try. My mother can run faster than that. I scurry. I know, I messed up the voice, but I think you guys get it. It's a very thick, kind of a thick accent. And of course, we even got someone playing Frederick Douglass in this movie. Raymond St. Jacques plays Frederick Douglass, and he's only in a couple scenes. He only speaks in one of them. He does a pretty good job, I'll say. Now, the plot is that it begins with the Battle of Antietam, where Robert Shaw is merely a captain, and he's leading a company of Union soldiers from a Massachusetts regiment. His regiment suffers heavy losses. I mean, we even see his commanding officer get his head blown up, which is a pretty cool practical effect, and you kind of don't expect it, which, I think this movie was an R. I think it was an R mainly for the battle scenes. If not, this is a very strong PG-13, 80s PG-13, but more than likely I think it's an R, just for the head exploding. But I don't even remember that. Then again, I never saw the first scene when I first saw the movie, so it was like, whoa, that's a good scene. I can imagine people in the theater when this movie came out have seen that. Anyway, Shaw is wounded, and he later loses consciousness in the battle, and he's awakened, of course, by Morgan Freeman's character Jean, who is a gravedigger, and he's sent to a field hospital. Now, while he's receiving medical attention, Shaw is informed that President Lincoln is on the verge of passing the Emancipation Proclamation, which I think you guys all know was the thing that Lincoln did that freed slaves in rebel-held territories. And while he's on leave in Boston, Shaw is promoted to colonel, and he's given command of the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry, as I mentioned, the first all-black regiment. He's actually offered it, and then, of course, he accepts, and he asks his friend, of course, the major character played by Cary Elwes, to be his second in command. And, of course, their first volunteer soldier is Thomas, Shaw's black freeman's friend. And, of course, many more join the regiment, and eventually it gets to, like, the size you would expect of a regiment. And, of course, among them, there's an escaped slave trip, free black man named Juniper Sharts, and, of course, the gravedigger. And at a military camp, the company is forced to endure training and stuff, and at first, they're only doing, like, menial work, and Shaw begins to realize that they're probably just going to be used for labor, so he starts standing up to people. Like later in the film, he stands up to a colonel that only wants to use him for, like, raiding for war profiteering. Not in the way that most people think of when they think of war profiteering. Most of the time when you think of war profiteering, you think of selling weapons to either sides to keep the battle going. This thing of war profiteering is like raid and pillage and sell off the stuff you pillage to make even more profit off of it. Like, think of it. South, during and before the Civil War, a lot of profit stuff like cotton and other crops that you could sell like that. So you can imagine with raiding, they would find a lot of that, and also items like houseware stuff that the rich plantation owners would buy. So you can imagine there's a lot of stuff to raid. And then, of course, there's other racist stuff like a quartermaster not wanting to give them stuff. It's not fully stated out at first until Shaw begins to it's not fully stated out until Shaw confronts the guy, but it's because, he's kind of a racist, which I do like that Shaw stands up for him. And Shaw, he's a very interesting character in the movie because you could tell that he considers it an honor to be leading these men, but at first, and even near the end, he doesn't really fully understand them, and it's because of the different culture. It's kind of a culture clash, because, think of it, he's a white male that was raised in the New England area in Boston, and while some of these men, well, actually, it seems like only Thomas is the only educated black man amongst them, and probably, like, doesn't really state where most of them came from. It kind of seems like it's a mixture of runaway slaves, or maybe freed slaves, and even some freemen that have been free for several generations. He doesn't understand them because of that culture mix. It's the African Americans and him, and he doesn't really understand it. Even the ones he knows, like Thomas, and even, of course, to a lesser extent, John, he doesn't fully understand it, even though they try to help him. And, of course, you see this is kind of personified in the character of Trip, because Trip is, as he states, he's not fighting for the country just, you know, to help it. He's fighting for his people, you know, his black brothers and sisters, which was interesting with it, and it's kind of personified in a conversation they have. And even though it might off-put some people, how it kind of seems like it's like Shaw just while Shaw's looking at the at his men, it's through his perspective and not really from their perspective, except for a couple scenes. I don't mind it, because the movie was mostly about the regiment, and he's the only character based on a real person, so they're going to have to throw it in there. And one thing I like is they throw in the letters. I don't remember if they were actually written by Shaw or if they're like just amalgams of stuff he said or something, but they're pretty good letters. They're written mostly to his mother, which majority of that character scenes are cut out of the movie, so kind of sad there, but we see her a couple times, and it's interesting to hear his, you know, it's basically like if you were to have it's basically like in the Shakespeare, like it's like a soliloquy. That's what it kind of serves the purpose of, and it's a motif we see him later use again in that's later used by Edward in The Last Samurai. So it's good to see it used, and I actually do like that. I think for films like this, they should do some stuff like that more if the film calls for it. And in this case, you know, a soldier, he's going to write letters, so it works. And of course, at the end, he gives them away, so it works. Now, of course, since this movie is based on history, I don't feel guilty about giving away the ending of the movie. Most of the times I would, but this is actually based on historical stuff, so I don't think I've really given away stuff here. Now, the last part of the movie is the battle at Fort Wagner, where the 54th Infantry charged first. They actually volunteered. Shaw volunteered them. And, of course, they suffer heavy casualties, including Shaw and, of course, his major, and then a lot of the soldiers, obviously. And, of course, we get the little end thing that Wagner was never taken, and that the regiment's courage spurred the recruitment of other black soldiers, and that by the end of the war there was over 180,000 African American men in uniform, in which it says that Lincoln considered this instrumental in securing a victory for the Union. Now, I don't remember how many people of the regiment actually died. I think it was like half or something, but they fought valiantly, and it was a fitting end for him. And of course, you could tell the Confederacy was going to, once they got the body of Shaw and everyone inside the fort, you know, they're gonna ridicule him, and they did think it was a ridicule by burying Shaw with his men, which I'm not gonna say exactly what they said because it involves the N-word, but I think you get the picture. He's buried with him. Yeah, it's basically like that. But Shaw's mother didn't take it as an insult. She actually knew that her son would consider it an honor to be buried alongside the men that he fought with. And that's actually the thing that I like about the historical Shaw, is that he doesn't seem to have been like you would expect most, excuse me, how most white men would have been in that time. And I think that might have to do with the fact that he was raised in the deep North, even though I think he came from like I don't remember if he came from a middle class or upper class family, but he seems to. I don't know much about the historical one, but how he's portrayed in the movie, I think, is kind of skirting the line of adding stuff and presenting him accordingly. But based on that one comment, I'm guessing he didn't really care about the color of a man's skin. It's just that didn't determine what kind of person they were, which I guess is why in the movie they presented him trying to figure out his men, I guess, but that's just me. But I think, based on what I know, I think he probably would have considered it an honor to be buried with his friend, and he's one of those commanding officers that you probably would kind of admire a little bit, and it just makes me wonder what he would have contributed to the war if he had actually survived that battle. But that's just me. I know from what I've actually done from some little research that he was loved by his men, because apparently when he fell in the battle, he fell into the fort and his men went in after him. That's not how it's portrayed in the movie. It would have been interesting if how they could have portrayed that in the movie, but his men in the movie, when they portray his fall, it's an emotional moment, and his men, they rally behind the major, and it's a great scene. But anyway, in conclusion, this is a very fun, I don't think fun's the appropriate word to say for a movie like this. It's a very entertaining drama war film. The battle scenes are filmed pretty well. There's no shaky cam, at least that I noticed. Good use of practical effects. Good use of lighting, too. The acting was very well. Matthew Broderick did a good job, I have to say. Out of the films I've seen, I think this is probably my favorite performance of his. I'm actually surprised he didn't get any nominations for this. Don't think he did. Let me check. I know he didn't. Nominee. Nope, he did not get a nomination for his performance in this movie, which is kind of surprising. But I wish he would have. He had some good moments as Shaw. Like he has one of my favorite. One of my favorite lines he says in this movie. It's a scene when they find out about the pay. I'm not going to spoil the context of the scene, but it's a good line. If you men will take no pay, then none of us will. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But it's a good line. And there's even a part where Shaw's even talking about the whole thing about that a soldier could ignore an illegal order, but it might make some people not like him for a moment, but I can understand the context of it. If it was me, I still would have said, "Fuck no! You're gonna try to court-martial me for not following an illegal order? Good luck with that." But I'd probably be more successful now than back then. But anyway, my rating for Glory is 5 out of 5 because I don't really have any problems with the movie. I think the actors do their jobs well. Edward did a great job with the direction. James Horner's score is very good. The cinematography, excellent. And how the time period was filmed really does fit. I have to say, this is probably... is this the only Civil War movie I've seen? Yeah, I don't think you'd count Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter, but... yeah, I think this is probably my favorite Civil War movie. That's why... and that's why I want to see Lincoln, because you guys all know I like history, and I like specific, like in American history, the specific moments I like the Civil War is one place I like to research. Yeah, I have to say, yeah, this is my favorite Civil War movie. Anyway, 5 out of 5, and if you haven't seen this movie, I recommend it, especially if you are a fan of U.S. history.